Hello and welcome to part 3 of my Essential Jazz albums, a 3-part series in which I go through over 3 parts what I think are my Essential Jazz albums. What's my Essential Jazz? And why isn't it the Essential Jazz albums? But if it was I would use my knowledge of jazz to scan every single jazz album ever made and come up with 30 albums which I think are the Essential Jazz albums. But that is another video, and I've done that video. This one's different. I'm picking my Essential Jazz albums from my collection, so they have to be owned by me. So on the first video, I gave the example of there was a fire and I had to come up and grab 30 albums. You know, go and grab 30 jazz albums quick before the room burns down. Will I be able to do that in time? Yeah, you will, because this is made up. Okay, so you go and do that. Yesterday, I was kidnapped, right, by a group that were cruel in that they wanted to kidnap me and hold me at ransom. You know, and as I'm the only one with any money in my family, that would have been surely meant death, you know, unless one of my famous mates would bother to cough up some money. You know, don't think Planty would, not now. Anyway, he's not my mate anymore, really. I haven't spoken to him for a long time. But don't worry about that. That's another story, isn't it? We're not talking about that here. We're talking about me getting kidnapped and who would pay me off. But that's all made up again, you know. But anyway, these people who would kidnap me and going to kill me have been kind enough to let me get 30 jazz albums to listen to and provided me with a vinyl playing record player, which is very kind, really. It's thoughtful. So the scenario today would be that our government turns up and says, you have been doing Islamophobic and racist and all the phobics on your channel. You didn't realise it, but we've decided it. We've just come up with a new law, which means you are now. And we are going to, as a punishment, burn your record collection. Right, that we're gonna take you out into the town square, put you in them stocks, and then we're gonna get all that record collection behind you and burn it because it's essential for your living. And when you've said something we don't like, it's important that we destroy you. You know, destroy your career. And I go, oh, please, no, I don't think I could carry on. And then one of these types in the government has got a little bit of humanity. So I'll let him keep 30 jazz albums. Okay, go and pick your 30 jazz albums and they'll be safe. Well, that's what we've got here. And I've done 20 of them. Here, we're going to be going from 10 till 1. It's all ranks. We're going up. We're going to arrive at number 1 with my favourite jazz album. And that's what's keeping you here, isn't it? And I waffled on for nearly 3 minutes. Right, so should we get into it? There are some rules, of course. The rule is I can't have an artist twice. I can't have any jazz rock albums on here and pretend they're jazz albums. And there was another rule as well. I can't remember what the third one was. Oh, it has to be in my collection, the obvious one, yeah. Right. When I looked at 30 to 10, well, I started there, sorry, on number 10 now. When I looked at 30 to 21, I pulled out an Errol Garner album that belonged to my dad, and it was a 10-inch album that he'd bought in Paris. He also bought another album in Paris on that day, 70 years ago, because I think it was about 55 he went. So, or maybe 56 actually, I'm not sure. He bought another album that day, and I find this album absolutely remarkable. To this day, I find it's just proper jazz. This is what jazz is all about. And this album is not only a joy to listen to, it's a guitar album. It's the greatest jazz guitar album ever made by the greatest jazz guitarist ever made. And it's one of the most influential and important albums in history. Not this album, because when this was recorded, they didn't have albums. This is the classic recordings, the sort of bootleg almost recordings of the great Charlie Christian at Minton's. And I have this on 10-inch album that my dad bought in France. There's only 2 tracks on here. We have, oh, it's called, when you actually look at the thing, here it's called At Minton's. But here it's called Charlie Christian Jazz Immortal. Because, of course, he died at about 23. Right? And he basically invented the language of electric guitar that everyone from B.B. King, Chuck Berry, T-Bone Walker, Wes Montgomery, Barney Kessel, Pat Metheny, everyone, Alan Holdsworth's favourite guitarist, they all take from this guy. This is one of the most important musicians. But not only is that going on here, as you can see, one of the tracks which has been, mentioned after the event as being called Swing to Bebop, right? He's inventing bebop, because who else is on this legendary lineup? Well, here we've got Charlie Christian on guitar, Joe Guy on trumpet, and then we got Thelonious Monk on piano, Nick Fenton on bass, don't know who he is, and Kenny Clarke on drums. Kenny Clarke, Monk, and Christian, they're the guys who invented bebop. This is something else. So I know it's an important album. Now, the other day, I pulled this out again because, of course, being 70 years old, my dad bought it in 1955, 56, right? It's a 10-inch album. This is very important to me. So that's why I'm putting this one on. I put it on the other day. I tell you this now. Jazz guitar is Charlie Christian's style. That's it. That's it. It's like no one has surpassed him. He's got a tone unlike anybody else. And his phrasing, he owns it. It's like Louis Armstrong's like this. They invent a style of music. Charlie Parker's the same. They become the way you play that. Charlie Parker is the way you play bebop. That phrasing is it. He provides the way you play bebop. These guys didn't. Louis Armstrong provides the way that you play jazz. That's why he's the most important musician in history. And Charlie Christian establishes how you play the guitar. He has the greatest tone, and his phrasing is wonderful. And you feel like, because of that, you are hearing somebody just playing, and it's just pure genius. Interesting fact about Charlie Christian is his best mate was T-Bone Walker. Is that the right guitarist? Anyway, T-Bone Walker, Martin Taylor. Go and check the story out on my Martin Taylor, looking at the 10 greatest jazz guitarists. I'm not going to tell you here. I'm going to bet you go over a list today, because actually I might recall it wrong. Now I'm here. So that's what I've got at number 10 is Charlie Christian at Minton's. It's just incredible. Go and listen to it now. You will hear the greatest jazz guitaring ever. That's just my opinion. Right, so number 9. Is this a jazz album? Well, I put it on because if I don't put it on this list, what list is going to go on? And this is one of my top 10 albums ever of all time. This is just one of the greatest albums ever made. It is Ella Fitzgerald Sings George Gershwin. Now, this has been taken from the songbook series. This is a budget album that my dad bought on MFP in the early 70s. It cost him next to nothing. I grew up listening to this, and Ella Fitzgerald singing George Gershwin with Nelson Riddle arranging. That's as good as it gets. The greatest songwriter of the 20th century, with the greatest singer of the 20th century, with the greatest arranger of the 20th century. And she does all sorts of things. She is like a little girl, and she's like sexy and seductive, and then she sings the blues. There's also many aspects to Ella's singing. Fascinating rhythm, I got rhythm. She's gutsy and dirty. They can't take that away from me. He's playful. But on the title track, Embraceable You, it's just sublime. And that recording of Ella Fitzgerald singing Embrace Me, Embraceable You, I think that's my funeral music. It really is. It's that great. If I put it on, it always gets me every single time. She was again such a natural. She's such a natural. I heard this album since I was born. Her voice is in my system. If she's on the radio, I recognise her from the tone of her voice within about half a second. It's like it goes right into here. And she could do anything. She can sing anything. She's one of the great scat singers of all time, one of the great ballad singers of all time. She could sing soul, rock and roll. She just was unsurpassable. And yet with all those talents, and of course, you know how she got famous, of course. There was one of those talent shows out in Harlem, I believe, in New York. And she was a little girl and she used to dance on the streets, absolutely, like Billie Holiday, right at the bottom of society, as poor can be. And she used to dance on the streets to try and get money. So she turns up and went out to this thing to go and dance. And I don't know whether she did it and didn't get anywhere, or maybe she chickened out. Anyway, she thought she'd have a go at singing. She got up and won it. And from that point on, the world realised she was one of the great singers of all time. When she lay on her deathbed, she whispered to whoever's next to her, she said, I wonder why they loved me so much. Why did they like what I do? Why? Such a musician question to ask. She didn't think she was that good. And she sat there and thought about it. She goes, oh, I know what it was. It's because the songs were so great. Well, that's partly true. The songs are great. George Gershwin's songs are great, but no one sung them better than Ella Fitzgerald. That's what I've got at number 9. Don't care if you say it's not a jazz album. I don't care. At number 8, I've got to have some Oscar Peterson, and it's pretty obvious which one you're going to go for. It's going to be this one, Night Train. Right, Night Train features his classic trio of him, Ray Brown on bass, Ed Thigpen on drums. And what we've got here is basically, it's sort of a concept album recorded in 1962 over just 2 days, right? 2 days in the studio, and you come up with this. And it's just him getting into some blues, some funky, swinging jazz. It's just fantastic. Night Train, Sea Jam Blues, George Mine, Bags Groove, Moten Swing, Easy Does It, The Honey Dripper, Things Ain't What They Used to Be, I Got It Bad and That Ain't Good, Band Call, and Hymn to Freedom. This is one of the greatest albums ever made in terms of jazz. I love a piano trio album. And what does Oscar Peterson represent? Well, he represents almost like the Platonic piano trio. Right, he hasn't even got a drummer on this, doesn't need it. Oh, he has got a drummer on this. He's got Ed Thigpen, but later on he would be, I've made a mistake there, didn't I? He would be augmented by guitarists like Herbert Ellis or Barney Kessel. But yeah, he hasn't got a drummer on here because this grooves a little bit more, really tight. And the way he takes a sort of basically rhythm and blues tunes like Night Train and just balls it down to piano trio and still makes it groove is absolutely incredible. So yeah, this is a fantastic album. I grew up listening to it. I could sing your Night Train. Bing, bam, just behind the beat. Bam. Bam. All those 3 chords of the blues chords there, but they're so tightly voiced. The only way I can sing them is by singing the same note, and then it goes into this. It sounds like that, even though it's tiny. And Oscar Peterson, who's known for being this virtuoso, like, you know, post-art tape and virtuoso, he's playing I mean, this is on there. It's on there, but he's also so economic at the same time. So, yes, brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff here from Oscar Peterson. Brilliant. Night Train, classic album. Anyone should own it if they're into jazz. When I was very young, about 15, I heard Charlie Parker. I just thought he was incredible. Mum, I said, can I have a Charlie Parker album for Christmas? No Fitzgerald was saying that in my school at the time. It was a weird ask. But my mum provided. She went off because she was a good mum, and she is a good mum. Still around. And she went off and she got me this album. My dad may have been involved because he knew about the jazz as well. But I think I put my Christmas list in when I was 15, which was in 1983. I wasn't having a great time, to be honest, but in 1983, that Christmas, when I opened my presents, I had this album. Now, this is an album that's been pulled together at the time in the 80s. It's on the Joker record label, and it's part of, it's a 3rd in 3 volumes, which sort of goes through all the different Charlie Parker recordings with Dizzy Gillespie and all that lot. And this is the 3rd one, and this features the Miles Davis group. Well, I liked Miles Davis. It's probably why my mom picked me up. Oh, I know he likes Miles Davis, so I'll get him this one. And when I got this, I became obsessed with it. Right, everything on this album was recorded in 2 days in 1947. Right, Half of it was recorded on Tuesday, November the 4th, 1947, and half of it was recorded on December the 17th, 1947. This period is the most concentrated period in human history where great art is being made in such a concentrated form. I can't think of any other example where someone like an artist walks into like a studio somewhere and in that one day just churns out masterpiece, 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 masterpiece. Then goes off, scores some heroin, plays all night, gets drunk, gets into a fight, whatever they're doing. Then they're back in a few weeks later and again, masterpiece, masterpiece, masterpiece. Out of nowhere, my old flame, Clacter Beadstein, Don't Blame Me, Scrapple from the Apple, Bird Feathers, Craziology, Drifting on a Weed, Quasimodo, How Deep is the Ocean, Charlie's Week, and Bongo Deep. They were the recordings that I just poured over in terms of Charlie Parker. I assimilated the way he played, the way he swung. I assimilated his unique approach to bebop, which becomes bebop. Bebop is the way Charlie Parker plays. The musicians that created bebop, Charlie Parker wasn't the first. As I said, Charlie Christian, Kenny Clarke, Thelonious Monk, they're all pushing jazz forward at that point. But Charlie Parker comes in and he lays down the sound and the phrasing and the notes. All that there, that is the new sound. And that almost becomes jazz, isn't it? That's why jazz is hard, isn't it? That's why musicians find jazz hard. Because just trying to play, all that is ridiculous. Charlie Parker has to be on the list. That's where he is. He's on the list at that point. Right, let's move on now. We're getting near to the end of this epic collection of albums. What have I got at number 6? At number 6 on the list. Remember that number because you go on a countdown now to build up the tension, don't you, Andy? At number 6, I have this album, which has now usurped what was there before, which would have been the John Coltrane and Thelonious Monk album. Now it's been usurped by the Thelonious Monk Quartet. With John Coltrane at the Carnegie Hall. I've done a whole video on this very recently, literally a few days ago, and I wax lyrical about this. This is fantastic. It sounds amazing. They're all on form. It sounds like they don't know they're really being recorded. They're not making an album. Coltrane is just all over the place. I love to hear Coltrane. I think because Monk's compositions are so twisted and weird, they're not modal. He's not trying to create freedom. He's trying to get inside the blues and pull out something percussion and almost like Africanistic out of jazz. Right, it's angular, it's weird, and it's melancholic, and it's humorous at the same time. And so to put Coltrane into that and hear Coltrane's style as he has to negotiate what he described as falling down a dark mine shaft, that's how he described a Monk composition, is wonderful. The band is incredible, Shadow Wilson swings, Ahmed Abdul Malik swings, which is all you was required to do if you're in the rhythm section. So you can always follow it because you've always got that going on in the background. Monk's actually quite virtuoso on here. There's a lot of sort of very fast arctatum runs. Of course, Coltrane is in 1957. He's just had this spiritual rebirth, which I'll be talking about in a minute. He is still doing that sheets of sound thing, which does go as time goes on. So if you really want to hear Coltrane, at full-on virtuosity and experience the sheets of sound, go get this album. Absolutely wonderful. Number 6. We're getting close now. At number 5, Eric Dolphy, Out to Lunch. One of the greatest albums ever made. Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, Eric Dolphy on alto sax, flutes and bass clarinet, Bobby Hutcherson on vibes, Richard Davis on bass, and Tony Williams on drums. And on here, we get the first truly great insight into the mind of Eric Dolphy. Not just the incredible virtuoso soloing that seems to be just shooting off in every direction at once, but also his compositional mind at work. we're into the proper album era. And so people can open up the tracks like 8 minutes long, 6 minutes long, 7 minutes long, 12 minutes long, 8 minutes long. And they use that. So the compositions are very tight, but they're also very, have a lot of space to improvise. And it's exploring free jazz. And it's on that cusp of free jazz, which is actually more interesting. All the players are incredible. Tony Williams, how old he is when he did this? 19 years old. He's 19 years old, and he's playing on one of the most important jazz albums of all time, just laying it down. Dolphy's incredible on here. What can I say? You know this. Everyone knows this album, don't you? Do you want me to do a video just on this album? Dolphy, as I'm getting older, Dolphy's becoming one of my favourite jazz musicians. So that's what we've got at number 5. At number 4, I can't find my copy, so I've had to go for another. I've got 2 versions of this album, which tells you how important this album is. So I can't find my copy. I think it's at home. It's not here. The album I'm going to have at number 4 is Bill Evans' Trio Live at the Village Vanguard, which is actually included on this incredible box set, which if you're a jazz musician, jazz fan, jazz aficionado, go and buy it now, because all of these albums are incredible. This is the album that comes from a live recording that was made at the Village Vanguard. When you listen to it, you can hear the audience. They're clinking their little cups and stuff with their knives and forks in the background. They're not really chatting, but you can hear a few murmuring. There's only a few people in there. And yet they were witness to one of the greatest jazz albums ever made. Now, out of that session came not 1, but 2 recordings where he also produced Waltz for Debbie. And Waltz for Debbie is also on here. And really, that's only how you get a true idea of what went on. There was 2 concerts. There was one in the afternoon, there was one in the evening. By this time, Bill Evans had been, working with a unique compositional style and a very intense but beautiful, almost like romantic in their sort of classical music sense approach to jazz, which Bill Evans had brought in to Miles Davis's group on Kind of Blue. And the reason why Kind of Blue is the biggest selling jazz album of all time, and it's not like Milestones or Lift the Scaffold, is because Bill Evans is on there, and he just adds this extra thing in there, and it's just beauty. It's just pure beauty. It's darkness and beauty. And so Bill Evans really should have become a superstar at this point, but he was too intense, and a number of real personal tragedies just ground him down. And by 1980, he succumbed to what has been described as the longest suicide in history. So the albums are very melancholic. Now, one of the events that I think he never really quite got over was the fact that after creating the most perfect trio that he could ever have, which was him, Paul Motion on drums, and the great Scott LaFaro on bass, who was a young guy, but basically he had taken the bass and completely changed the language of bass. He's like the Charlie Parker of bass, Scott LaFaro is. And throughout the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, he's pioneering this sound. Once he plays with Bill Evans, they, in this sort of piano trio, with the sort of economy and brushwork of Paul Motion sort of holding it together in a very unique way, because that doesn't mean holding the beat down. That just means being very aware of the beat. Scott LaFaro, they both grow to sort of almost like both soloing at the same time. And the idea of root notes just disappears. And Scott LaFaro is up there and Bill Evans reacts. And it's almost like classical counterpoint going on. When they turn up to the Village Vanguard, not many people in, Sunday afternoon, they put down the definitive statement of that approach and the definitive statement of Scott LaFaro. 2 weeks later, Scott LaFaro is killed at the age of 22, 23 in a car crash. And the record company, realising this, they pulled together this album, Live at the Village Vanguard, Sunday, I think it's called Sunday Night. Was it Sunday? I can't read it. God, your eyesight's getting bad. Let's see if I can show you the cover up close if in the liner notes, if we have any in here. Have we got any liner notes in here? They should have this. And I'm glad I've got this box set out, actually, because it gives me a chance to talk about this in a way. No, we haven't got one. Right, so I'm going to have to try and show you like this. There's the cover. All right, can you see that? Can you see that? Focus, come on. This is professional, isn't it? Sunday at the Village Vanguard. And it was Sunday night because they did an afternoon show. Sunday at the Village Vanguard. Those tracks were chosen by Orrin Keepnews, I believe, because he was the guy that chose it. He was the guy that ran the label that these were on, to feature the virtuosity of Scott LaFaro. And so when this album came out, that gave it an extra impetus, which is why I think it partly has now become, I can't shut this anymore, God in heaven. Shall I just do that later, not do it on camera? That, I think, propelled it up. It's a very virtuoso choice. There's a lot of playing going on. There's a lot going on this. And then later on, Waltz for Debbie came out, which features Bill Evans' probably most famous composition, and it's a different thing. Of course, you could get the whole sessions now on a CD, but I don't think having like a ton of recordings with alternate takes actually is an album. I think it's a reference, and it doesn't work. So I would sneak in Waltz for Debbie on there. Bill Evans is one of my favourite jazz musicians. At the moment, the two that I am just obsessed by is Eric Dolphy and Bill Evans, which is interesting because they're like polar opposites in a way, but they both occupy each other's territory every now and then, which is interesting. Because Evans is classically trained and he's got a virtuosity level that's quite incredible. If you listen to his first solo album, it's a lot more angular than Out There Great album. I'm just going to end up going on and on about Bill Evans. Shall we move on? Because we're down to the last three. Right, this was a difficult choice. At number 3, I've got Louis Armstrong, the greatest jazz musician that ever lived and the greatest musician of the 20th century. Which album am I going to go for? Well, of course, when he's at his heyday, there aren't no albums. He was putting out 78 records. So I thought, well, shall I go for the Hot Fives? And every time I've done this list, I have gone for the Hot Fives and the Hot Sevens, which are these very important recordings he made with a group that was specially put together in the late 1920s to record with. And with that in mind, he really basically lays the groundworks for every single approach and technique, which we are going to hear underlying popular music, rock music, and jazz in the 20th century. These are the most important recordings and historic recordings ever made. So normally I'd go for the Hot Fives and Hot Sevens. But of course, Louis Armstrong, right through his career, right up until he was having hit records where with It's a Wonderful World and Hello Dolly and We've Got All the Time in the World. He was having hits right the way through. There's never been a musician occupy this space in history, ever. So I thought I'm going to go for a compilation album, and the best one is the Ken Burns one. So this came out to accompany the film, right, Jazz, made by Ken Burns, which has become the authoritative history of jazz, and it's biased. My God, is it biased? But we don't want to get into that here. We want to get into the joy of this album. So this starts off right early on, even pre-Hot Fives, with stuff he did with King Oliver, things like Chimes Blues and Cakewalking Blues. And then we get Heebie Jeebies, you know, that thing where he apparently dropped his lyrics off the music stand, so he had to make up the lyrics and started scatting. And I love it when Louis Armstrong tells that story, because it's obviously not true. And he says, I carried on, I was just making up scatting, I was just making it up. And he said, the guy in the recording studio he goes, Louis Armstrong, you've just invented scatting. He even tells it like that, you know. I love him. I love Louis Armstrong so much. I just absolutely love him in every shape and form. Mahogany Calls Stomp, Tight Like This, West End Blues, Headed Blues, absolutely incredible. And it's just also brilliant. Chinatown, My Chinatown, Stardust, the version of Stardust he does on here Let's tell the story of Stardust. Right at the beginning of this series, I talked about Bix Beiderbecke. Bix Beiderbecke was such an incredible soloist. But one night he sat there soloed away, and in the audience is Hoagy Carmichael. And Hoagy Carmichael's a genius composer. And he listens to one of the phrases that Bix is playing. And he takes that phrase and he creates a song called Stardust. So this phrase is incredibly complex. If you think of Stardust. It's all over the place. Intervallic, and he does all this all over the place, right? Louis Armstrong loves Bix, loves Hoagy Carmichael. So in the 30s, he sits down and records a version of Stardust. And what does Louis Armstrong do with Stardust? He reduces the whole melody down to one note. The greatest there ever is. This goes all the way up, right through Mac the Knife, A Fire Romance, Hello Dolly, and What a Wonderful World. It's got everything in it. It's got Rocking Chair, you know. I love that. You know, that's when he sings along with the Jack Tiergarden, doesn't he? That trombone player, and they have that back and forth going on, and it's just so full of love. That's what Louis Armstrong is. It's all just so full of love. And music is love. And Louis Armstrong embodies it. The Ken Burns, I've got it at number 3. Sacrilege, really. Sacrilege to have a compilation that came out way after the time for a TV series as the 3rd greatest jazz album ever. But it is. So, we're down to the last 2. What have I got at number 2? Elvin. I wish I could even sing it. You can't sing it. Usually at this point, I'm more contentious and I go, my favourite album is Live at Birdland, which it is. Coltrane does more stuff on this. This is very much his spiritual album. But essential. It's essential. You can't not have it on the list. Do I have to talk about this? Is there even any point in me talking about it? Right. If you don't know what this album is, and you've never heard it, right, and you've just watched all the way through 3 episodes of me doing the, 30 essential jazz albums, and I've got to number 2, and it's at number 2, and you've never heard it, what can I say? I'll tell you what I could do instead of talk about it. I don't even want to talk about it. I want you to go, Andy hasn't talked about this. Yeah, he's not even talking about it. Why isn't he talking about it? Because it's that important. So what I'm going to try and do is that people do this on the internet. I'm going to try and I'm going to try and line myself up. And I can't, because I can't see. Once I put it in front of me, I can't see. So I hope this works. Let's have a go. And this would make a great thumbnail. That needs to come a bit forward. About there, would you say? Ready? Okay. Let's do it. Is that right? Shout me if it's right. That's the best I can do. You need someone helping you on this, really. I'll move it around a little bit like that, in the hope that somewhere there's a point where it matches up, because I might use that as a thumbnail. That would be a great thumbnail. It'll give away a Love Supremes on there, won't it? What an album. All praise be to God, to whom all praise is due. Let us pursue him in the righteous path. Yes, it is true. Seek and ye shall find. Only through him can we know the most wondrous bestowal. During the year 1957, I experienced, by the grace of God, a spiritual awakening which has led me to a richer, fuller and more productive life. At the time, in gratitude, I humbly asked God to be given the means and privilege to make others happy through music. I feel this has been granted through his grace. All praise be to God. So that's what this album is. It's a prayer. It is honouring God or the universe or whatever you want to call it. It's what I try and do on this channel. I'm not saying I'm Coltrane, I'm not saying this is a love supreme. But I try and honour the music. I try and honour the love that is contained within the music. I try and discuss music. I try to get into the philosophy of music, but also why we love it so much. Two highfalutin ideas and low ideas at the same time, or simple ideas. In doing that, sometimes I move towards the spiritual and mystical. And in talking about it and doing it, I have moved more and more towards the mystical. And I have become more spiritual. If there was a point where I realised that my dislike of organised religions and the hypocrisy of going to a Church of England school and seeing how stupid, organised religions was, and rejecting and being an atheist for most of my life, the thing that was always there was the music of John McLaughlin and especially John Coltrane, and the idea of spirituality, which I could feel. And I could feel it referred to something. At some point in my life, I went, that feeling, it's a thing. And truth and logic and rationalism has got nothing to do with it. It's something else. And it's to do with humanity, and it's to do with us owning the fact that we are in this life and accepting it for what it seems to be to us. That's what I got from this album. That's how important this album is. It's a beautiful, spiritual experience. Number one. Not had a Miles Davis album on. So it's going to be Miles. Which one's it going to be? Kind of Blue. Kind of Blue, the biggest selling jazz album of all time. No. I did think it. But no. It's not Kind of Blue. What about Bitches Brew? Andy likes Bitches Brew. Yeah, it's a fusion album though, isn't it? Can't be on the list. Jack Johnson. Big Fun. We Want Miles. Deco. None of those could be on the list. Even Feed the Kilimanjaro. Miles Smiles could be on the list. That's one of his great quintet albums. But you know something? If you say jazz album, if someone say, Andy, what is the greatest jazz album? No, just straight down the line, like a quintet or a quartet, just playing jazz standards, really playing. What is it? What's the greatest one? And straight away, one album comes to mind. I absolutely love this album. Going through it, I've actually got 3 copies of this album because I love it so much. 2 CDs and a vinyl copy. That's my number one. Milestones by Miles Davis. Featuring Julian Cannonball Adderley on alto sax, John Coltrane on tenor sax, Red Garland on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, and Philly Joe Jones on drums. Right? Perhaps the greatest jazz quintet of all time. Dr. Jekyll, Sid's Ahead. It says Dr. Jekyll here, it's actually Dr. Jekyll. Sid's Ahead, 2 bass hits, Miles, Billy Boy, and Straight No Chaser. It's just such a heavyweight album. Cannonball and Coltrane up against each other. It's just brilliant. They're just so brilliant. They're just so brilliant. Philly Joe Jones, greatest jazz drumming ever recorded on this. Just a virtuoso, doing everything, brushes, playing fast, everything. Miles Davis, holding it all together, exploring modality on the track Miles, which I think, for me, is more important than So What, and it's a better tune. And when he goes into this bit, you got Philly Jones go, I couldn't even really sing it, let alone play. And he does this between the toms, and it just swings. It's so cool. And the opening, Dr. Jekyll, Miles just comes in like the most virtuoso trumpet playing you've ever heard. He's just all over it. Absolute virtuoso player. Right? Not all minimal and Milesy, just all over it. Straight No Chaser, Thelonious Monk. Absolutely amazing. Billy Boy's great. Sid's Ahead. It's all just great. It's all so great. Miles is playing open trumpet. He's playing muted trumpet. This is like the best it gets. That is the best it gets. Milestones from 1958, I think. Brilliant. So I've finally got to the end of my list. I hope you enjoyed that. That's the Essential Jazz albums done. So as I film this, we're into August now. That's like the summer month, isn't it? We're right into the middle. It's in the summer month. And of course, it's in the UK. We've had all the hot weather now. It's gone a bit sort of grey and boring. And I think I may well have gone through my collection now and pulled out as much as I want from it. I wanted to really go back to the collection. I wanted to go back to holding albums in my hand. And I feel like I've done that. So I now got to go away and think what I'm going to do for the next month. I've got a few ideas of things. For a long time, I wanted to talk about events that happen in music. I would love to be able to do that. Sometimes those videos do really well, but the events I want to talk about probably won't do that well. This is what I'm up against all the time. But, you know, say, talk about the Benny Goodman Chick Webb battle in 1937 or whenever it was, 39, 37, 38, somewhere around that. I'd love to get into that. Look at that as a historic event. I would love to look at Woodstock and Altman and compare the two. That is what I'm thinking of doing this, is talking about events. And I really want to be able to try and keep utilising the collection as much as I can. And so I want to be able to use those as props rather than having to go home and edit photographs in, because I became very tired of doing that and it was taking hours. So this has enabled me to get my head back into thinking about the videos rather than just worrying about editing, which is what they had become. Just letting you in the inner workings of where this channel's going. This channel can only survive if I reinvent it, and I have reinvented it, and I'll carry on reinventing it as we go forward. Finding new things to talk about, new things that interest you, and trying to follow you guys as you watch the channel. So you don't go, oh, I'm fed up with Andy, he's done enough now. Seen all this before. So it's time to move on, and that's where I'm at. So I'm going to go home and have a think about what to do next. I'm in a bit of a black space at the moment. But if you want to support me on this journey, you can be by liking this video. You could subscribe to the channel. That'd be the first thing you could do. Put a comment on, maybe. If you want to support me, you could become a Patreon. You become a free member. There's 1,000 free members now over at my Patreon, which is a great place to share stuff, share ideas, put all stuff. And I put stuff up for the free members. And if you're a paid member, then you can get access to the Andy Edwards radio show, which I absolutely love at the moment. So while all these jazz albums are out, I might just leave them out rather than put them all back and go through and start playing, do a few jazz ones. There's a lot of prog fans here, and they won't like that, though. That's the problem. They won't like it. The proggers won't like it. They don't like it. I might have to do a video on prog versus jazz, because that's the real big dialectic that I have here on this channel. But if you watch this to this point, you're probably a jazz fan, so you go, oh yeah, I love that, Andy. Maybe I should do 2 shows a week, one a prog show and one a jazz show. I could pick jazz to the cows come home. I could do 100 shows. Prog. Yes, I don't know whether I could. Anyway, that's by the by. How else can you support me? You can become a member of this channel. There's 2 memberships. There's a more expensive one, which is, I think it's £5 a month. And that gets you access to all the videos I put out earlier, so you don't have to wait for the premiere. Usually I don't put them, I do monetize those videos, but the ones that you get as members only videos, they're not monetized, so there should be no ads in. If there are, let me know, because there shouldn't be. I haven't monetized them. Also, as a member, you not only get members videos, but if you sign up for the cheaper one, which is the drummers one, I think it's called For the Drummers, you will get my drum educational content. So that's ways to support me. And the last way you can support me, although there's a few others, but I won't go into them here, is you could send me a lovely donation through my PayPal tip jar, which is the links of all those things are down below. Thanks for watching this series. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you on the next video, and what that's going to be about, I do not know.